The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. So you just click on your desktop to hide that, I think. There you go. You're all right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Computer Resources Summer Release Preview for our pending summer release. We've done these over the past couple of releases, and we get really good feedback in terms of how folks are able to comment and give us some suggestions around what they see coming and what they would like to see coming. And I think that what we'll discover this morning and throughout this summer is that we're continuing to respond to the feedback we get. We have a quorum, I believe, in terms of the folks who have responded, and I just want to take a quick moment to do some introductions. My name is Mike Bronder. I'm the Executive Director here at Computer Resources. I have Patrick Grace with me, who's a product manager who has been here far longer than I have.
You've kicked a great hair on.
And I expect that many of you have met Patrick in person. If we haven't met in person, I look forward to that opportunity whenever that comes up. So like I said, we're going to get right into this. I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then Patrick is going to dive into the actual product review itself. Following that, Patrick, I think we have some interactive polls.
Right, we have a few poll questions that we get the feedback from.
Yeah, and so be ready to interact. You'll have instructions on how that all proceeds.
Absolutely.
Poll everywhere. Is
poll
that right?
everywhere.
Okay. If you've come to Inform, you've worked with Poll Everywhere before, but we find it's a nice tool to sort of collect and archive this kind of feedback. All right. So with that, like I said, we've been doing a lot of work collecting feedback from the both in terms of personal interviews as well as through our annual surveys that we ask for feedback on. All of those get read, all of those get cataloged, and we weigh each one of those. So those are really important, and we appreciate your response. If you haven't seen one, please let us know, because we want you to. So with that, what you will see this summer is the next step on top of the foundation that we built and implemented last summer with the release of the core hosting platform. We put a lot of work, you all put in a lot of work in making that successful, and we're starting to see the fruits of that come through in this release. There were some really critical components that we needed to upgrade in order to bring the foundation that we've built over the last 35 years in terms of student information management into the sort of environments that you and your users have been asking for a long time. So we put a lot of work into that, and I think that you'll see over the next hour or so that's going to pay off pretty significantly, starting in just about 3 weeks, right? So the focus really, while we think about usability, and we think about the number of clicks, and we think about making things easy to use, and taking a look at workflow. One of the very frequent comments that we get is that users don't necessarily feel like MMS, like Computer Resources, has been a contemporary application. And that's been a pretty consistent piece of feedback for a long time. And we needed to do a bunch of work to really start to be able to respond to that in a meaningful way. And that's what you're going to start to see in just a minute. So we've shifted from the focus on usability and creating a web-based experience or a mobile-based experience for users into an experience that makes tasks more meaningful, that starts to demonstrate that we understand what is happening in a school office, what's happening in a classroom, what's happening in that interaction between students and parents at home, and how that contributes to student success in school. we're able now to focus on what users are feeling like when they're in the application, and why they're spending time in the particular areas that they are. So with that, what you will see is a focus on functionality. There is a lot of new functionality that we've added. There's also a lot of functionality that we've upgraded. One of the other very key pieces of feedback that we've heard very clearly over the last 10 months or so is the need for communication. And that's communication both within a district, within a school, between students and parents, as well as between computer resources and our customers, right? So, so we've built, as we promised, over the past several months, we've started to build some of that communication directly into the application itself. You've seen other things like automated status updates and dedicated websites to, being able to log in and see what the status of your hosted applications are. And we're starting to take the next steps on that and implement some communication tools directly into the application. And then you'll see too that that we're going to talk about how users feel. So one of the pieces of feedback that we've had and are responding to is the diversity of applications that we've supported for the last number of years. There's generations, which still has some key dependencies on it, but there's also vision, the dashboards and analytics tool that all MMS customers have available to them. There's enrollment packet, which is the survey and registration form and e-commerce package that we have available. There's MMS itself, the various portals that we started to consolidate last year into a single sort of launchpad through that single sign-on portal. And that's a lot of different stuff. So we had to take a look at all of that in terms of what user experience is. And we decided to consolidate some of that into what we're going to call vision. So vision is, one, it's a familiar term to many of you because of your experience with the dashboard and analytics tool. And it is the next step that computer resources is taking in terms of the management and use of student information. Now, why vision? So we know that if schools are going to do anything other than manage, the thing that's important in front of them right at the very moment, the tardy students, the line of students, visitors, health services, report cards, transcripts, and what have you, that they need to be able to take a look at what the student information is that they've been inputting through all of this and sit back and be able to be a little bit strategic in terms of trends that they're able to recognize month over month, year over year, class over class, right? Mm-hmm. So vision is very much a step in that direction. We're also, very focused on making sure that schools and students and families feel empowered to reach their aspirations. And again, vision, is very much about encouraging that kind of attitude as we go through the mundane tasks on a daily basis. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, we really are focused on unifying all of the different applications that you have, not just through a single sign-in portal, but through a unified experience. And you'll see that again in just a minute when Patrick launches into that product demo. And with that, Patrick, I will pass it off to you, and I'll look forward to feedback at the end of this session.
Well, good morning, everybody. And just to make sure, we didn't do this when we started, but I just sent out a chat along the channel here to make sure everybody could hear us. If you could, yeah, sorry, Mike. If you could reply that you heard us, that was great. Anybody come back and say you heard us? Okay, not getting any replies. All right, I'm going to do something really, really crazy here. I'm going to unmute you all. And if you could somebody say something to us, that'd be great. Oh, we have questions. Yes, I can hear you. Okay, great, great. That's wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
It's really good. That's a first step in communication.
Like make sure you can be heard, right? So we're going to go ahead and take a jump into the application here. You'll recognize our login page at this point. Let me close off this other piece here. There we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in as the administrator. One of the things Mike talked about was a unifying element to this interface that we have here. One of the challenges we gave our development team was to reduce the barriers between the different applications that we would have. So a staff portal, admin portal, teacher portal, to make it more easier to navigate, so have a better experience so that folks could get their jobs done more quickly. So let's go ahead and just take a look. I'm logging in as administrator, but this is exactly the same environment that a staff member would see. So just take a moment and look at this page, and before I step you through it. Just illustrate a couple things as we go. So what you can see here is a left side flyout menu that has all the elements that you would need based upon your roles and permissions. It gives you everything at your fingertips. For example, as a guidance counselor, I need to deal with students. So I click on the students function here, and it takes me directly to that page I need to work at. We know from experience, because you have told us, that a principal, guidance counselor, front office staff, guidance staff, they're mostly student facing, and they need to work with an individual student as quickly as possible. By putting the students right there at the top of our menu choice, we've made it easier for folks to get their jobs done and work with the kids that they need to work with. But one of the benefits of having things at your fingertips is we can make it yet even faster. If you take a look at the star next to the word students, if I click on that, that just told the system that I'm going to come here frequently. I want this to be part of my favorites. So if I go back to my dashboard, my screen changed a little bit. It now added students into my favorites list. You can select whatever page you are working on, whatever workflow that you use frequently, and add them to your favorites so that you don't have to dive through the menus to get to it, just right there in your desktop. In addition to using the favorites to help you get through the software, we have recents. If you look to the right in the green area, you can see student profile is now on the recent. But if I go to daily attendance entry, and that pulls up, and I go back to my dashboard, you'll see the daily attendance entry is the first item in my recents. The system keeps track of where you've been. And so if you get interrupted, you need to come off your system, you go right back into where you left off and continue your work. So we're trying to make this very easy to navigate, very easy to get to where you need to be. The third feature within this ease of navigation piece, I should say the fourth feature, is the search for a page. Say I'm a guidance counselor and I need to do GPAs, but I don't know where in the menu tree GPA calculations are buried. If I come down to search for a page and type GPA, any function I currently have listed in my privileges will be brought up that has GPA in it. Click on GPA and go. It takes me to the calculate GPA page. And it's waiting. There we go. And so I'm right here. And then I can mark it as favorites because I may be back here quite frequently. I'm back to my dashboard. And there we go. So looking at this, you can see that we've kind of blended and merged the different portals together, admin and staff. We've put some ease of navigation, ease of use tools in place for you, and kind of made a direct link to where you need to go.
In a lot of ways, Patrick, I think what we've done is we've created a personalized experience for any unique user.
That's exactly where I was going, Mike.
Right.
It is a personalized experience. These are all driven off of your permissions and your role.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we have that basic superset of privileges and functions that you can perform, you as the user can then define your interface a little bit more precisely. So you can drive right in and put those frequencies in there and make it your desktop.
Right, and it seems like it might actually be a good way for, say, a tech director to help an individual user set up an environment that they're going to be using on a daily basis.
That's a great point, because the other challenge we gave our development team to do was to make this so intuitive, so easy to use, that somebody without 20 some odd years of experience with MMS could use it, or somebody with minimal training could use it. So if we were getting a new employee, a new staff member, a new teacher, whatever the case may be, that everything they need is right at their fingertips, a click or two away, that they don't need 3 weeks of training or 16 years of experience to be successful. And I look at this and I go, we're pretty darn close to that goal.
Right.
We maybe we didn't nail it, but we're hammering on it pretty hard. So this is pretty exciting. The other element on this screen that is very exciting for all of us is we heard from our customers that they need more you guys need more communications from us. You need to have clear messaging from us. And in our system, we've always had district and school messaging. You've had those two channels so that schools could communicate with their stakeholders. We've added two new channels. One is CR feed and the other is alerts. And you can see them in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. CR feed, we're going to have learning content for you. We're going to have information about opportunities to attend conferences or webinars. We'll even have a few interesting pieces of information about what's going on in education in general, as well as some marketing content so you're aware of the new features and functions that we're putting out to make your lives a little bit easier. The alert channel is exactly what it is. It's an alert channel. And I'd like to jump out of here for a second and go to the teacher page. Let me log in as a teacher. There we go. And just to illustrate the point of what happens when we have an alert, you can see that the alert tab is bright and red. And if we were to click on any one of these pieces, you would see the information that pertains to that alert. You also see the roles, staff, admin, or teacher, that this content is relevant to. So you can go ahead and read through it and see it. You can also see that we have district messages, which are yours. And if we had any school or CR feed messages, you would see those numbers there as well. So this screen does kind of communicate to you in a very proactive way what's going on with our system and what's going to happen next. So alerts, I think I failed to mention this. Alerts would be things that you would normally see in the emails that I've been sending periodically about systems being down or some outages we have with an upstream provider. It may be an announcement that tomorrow night between 9 and midnight, we're going to do a maintenance on our servers, or we're going to do an update for the software. So you're aware of what's happening with your system, so you know what to expect when you log on. So these alerts are, in our testing of this, are getting really good response from our customers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
So looking at this as well, you can see the teacher here doesn't have any favorites, so I logged in as a different user, and we can certainly establish favorites for them. So they go to the summary grid, assignment grade entry, skills grade entry, whatever the case may be, it'll be right there for the teacher to activate on that one click.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the part that gets me really excited. Just the ease of access of Mike.
Sure, absolutely.
This is nothing like we've ever seen from us before. This is
right.
Very exciting. I can't say that enough.
Right. And again, I mean, it's so you'll also hear from us more over the next 4 weeks around some online teacher certification applications that we've been developing for well, it's been a while.
It's been a couple of years.
That sort of learning content to help teachers, starting with teachers, get up to speed when they don't necessarily use the same type of functionality month over month or week over week.
Right.
Submitting grades, for instance.
Right.
It's a kind of thing that can be, again, plugged. Yeah, it could be delivered through the CR feed.
Mm-hmm.
It could be sent out as a school message, or you could help them set up their favorites list so that they have those key areas where they know they need to go without having to remember how the menu is structured.
That's correct.
Right.
So that's what we have right there. So our work didn't stop here. We heard some other things from our customers over the past year in terms of how to make a parent's life easier, or how to make a school administrator's life easier, communicating with parents. And so we've done some things to the family portal that are pretty interesting. So I'm going to jump out of here and jump in as a parent. Here we go. So if you've used our CR Family Portal, this interface should be very comfortable to you. It should look very familiar. But we've done a couple different things to it. We've added a new region called Reports. And one of the things we heard is that schools really liked the function we had in the old parent portal, where they could deliver a report card to a parent. They didn't have to mail it out. Right. They could just say they're available, go get them. Same thing with progress reports. And so what we've done is we've created this reports area and started populating it with those valuable reports that schools have kind of told us that this is what they want to do.
Sure.
So if I click on reports here, in this particular student, for Amy, who's a high school student, you'll see an unofficial copy of her permanent transcript. If this was a skills-based school or a competency-based school, you could see that skills report card, right? So outcome-based there, as well as a subject report card. And parents and students can go fetch these for themselves without causing a big print job at the school in an effort to mail these things out.
Right.
And so we've heard that. We've also, when looking at the reports, we're trying to come up with what other valuable reports that you folks would need in here. So as part of the feedback, if I think one of the poll questions has is, what don't we have here? What else would you like to see? Don't be afraid to throw parent-facing reports in there as a potential option.
Right.
So we're looking at this, and I know looking at the names of folks who are here, some of you haven't really seen this in a while, so I'm going to take about 30 seconds and drive through the family portal as a parent, just to give you a sense of what's going on. The at a glance is that super view of the student, where they are, everything's happening. And if you take a look at the courses along the left-hand side, you take a look at the recent scores, so you can see what grades the student has in the last handful of assignments, as well as the daily attendance. That's a pretty interesting piece of information. And if we come down a little bit, I'm stuck on my screen here. Okay, that's interesting. Just refresh that real quick.
Well, it's an artifact of GoToMeeting there.
I think, yeah, it is. So we're kind of stuck there. But down below here, we also have schedule and behavior. So let's jump out of here for a second and come into, behavior's turned off.
By design.
By design,
right?
Well, if I was really smart, I would have planned this conversation this way. But one of the things that we also added to this is actually really great. We've heard from our customers that we need to turn off behavior for the parents so they don't see the discipline.
Right.
There's been a perception out there that parents can see way too much information about the discipline and activities of the students. Well, in reality, we show just the date, the infraction code, the teacher who wrote them up, and the time and location. We show no other notes of supporting information for the parent, so they are pretty clean on what they have there. So even with that, some schools wanted to turn off the behavior so that the parents didn't have access to it. So through the administrative settings, we can now turn off the behavior.
Right.
We can also turn off scheduling. Why is that important? If you think about what's going to happen here over the next couple of months in most high schools and junior high, middle schools, you're going to be finalizing the schedule, and a lot of things are in flux. And what you don't want is to have all those folks calling saying, I don't want Mr. Grace as my math teacher or Mr. Bronder as my physics teacher.
You really don't want Mr. Bronder as your physics teacher.
Well, I was going to say the same thing about me as a math teacher. But so you don't want to deal with those types of changes when everything is still fluid. So we can turn off the schedule over the summer and make it so parents can't see it until you're ready to publish it. Once you're ready to publish it, it's a simple matter of going into the admin settings, school configurations, and turning it back on. And as if by magic, there it is. So we have a pretty good way of managing that information.
So in some ways, Patrick, what we're doing here is we're continuing to sort of build that foundation for personalizing the experience within a district, right?
Absolutely.
We know that districts who are, in schools that are particularly successful are the ones that spend energy building the culture, that they want in their district. They respond to their, their own users and stakeholders' needs.
That's true.
And that's really what drove the configuration for this parent portal.
That's exactly right. So jumping off here for a moment and coming in as a student. Now, this is a new feature. Up until this point, students could not log into the family portal.
But they did have access through the mobile application.
They had access to the mobile application. They also had access to the legacy student portal.
Right.
But this is so much better.
It's funny that you mentioned, the legacy portals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it I think that highlights, one of the commitments that we've made in terms of how we prioritize our development. Right. So we have hundreds and hundreds of districts, hundreds and hundreds of schools that all have a different level of comfort with technology. There are schools that want to use generations forever. There are schools that are really used to the MMS portals. And there are schools who are really ready for something new. And what we've done is we've made the commitment since I joined a number of years ago to not leave anybody behind. So those users who are still comfortable in generations can work in generations, through their web-based experience, and we may be able to point to some of that on the new menu. But there's also, we didn't disrupt the parent portal or the student portal until we had the functionality to fully replace it here.
One of the things you say a lot, Mike, whether it be in our internal meetings or when we're out talking with customers, is you said that we had an opportunity at one point to absolutely just stop what we're doing and build a totally new SIS. And that would be much easier, probably much faster, to get us to an end result where we have a fully web-based, user-friendly, great experience SIS. But because of that sentiment of not wanting to leave anybody behind, we made the hard choice of kind of, what's the term? Building the new boat as we're selling the old one. That's the phrase. And this is really a great example of that. We have now kind of deprecated the legacy student portal, and they can operate here and get exactly what they need.
I'm glad you were listening. That's great.
Yeah. Perfect. So, so in the student side here, and it looks exactly like the parent side, with the one exception is that the students only see their data. They're not going to see their siblings, they're not going to see their brothers and sisters or anybody else in their household. They can see just theirs. They'll be able to look at their assignments, look at their grades, look at whatever reports they have. And one of the other things I failed to show when I was talking about reports in the parent portal, but it's also available for the students, is the progress report. So we can take a look at American Lit 11 Honors and view the student's progress report right here on the screen. And they'll have everything that you need to know exactly where you are on one piece of paper, or virtually one piece of paper. This is exactly the same feature we had in the parent portal, legacy parent portal, legacy student portal, that our customers, you folks, told us you really wanted back. You wanted this document, and it's there. We put it in there for you. And actually, it's a great and useful piece of information for both parents and students to keep track of what's going on. So one of the things I like to kind of take a step back on and talk about within the parent portal is, Mike alluded to CR enrollments and forms that we have, and this is a pretty exciting piece we have here. You want to go?
No. What's interesting is that there's a lot of work that's gone into this release, and I'm really excited about enrollment packet, and I have been for a long time. And in particular, I'm very excited about what we're adding to the offering this summer. There's a lot to be done here with enrollment packet. You will probably see a new name to that in the near future as well, because when it comes to visioning, one of the functions that is underutilized is the survey tool. Right. And so Patrick's going to talk about, the first step in engaging parents more effectively. And I recall, I want to take a quick aside. I recall a couple summers ago, while my kids were in the middle of high school, a conversation that happened on the sidewalk while I was raking my lawn, and a friend of mine drove by and started complaining about the paper packets that we had to fill out each year, with the same information.
Right.
And how this was 2016, how in 2016 that shouldn't be the case.
Right.
And so what we're really encouraging here is putting an end to that kind of conversation, and enabling this for all of our MMS Online customers.
Right. So that's exactly it. And to make that easy for everybody, with your support renewal, the letters we sent out a couple months ago, we've included CR enrollment packet as a value add to the system with 3 standardized forms. Those forms you see illustrations of here on the right, and we have a authorization form. My kid can go on this field trip, or my student can be in pictures, or it can be the football authorization, whatever authorization you have here. We can put those in there. We also have a student contacts, emergency contact form that you can put all the information in or validate the information you have, as well as the student profile form, all the data you need to collect to register a new student or to validate the data you have on an existing student. So looking at this information, these 3 standard forms, most schools will be able to take them as they are and deploy them. Now, there are some schools that may need some customization, and that's this level of service that we can talk about after the fact. Sure. But right here, we have a way of plugging in a new student, registering a new student, getting essential information to the school without a packet that's five feet thick, without the work and effort of compiling that information, typing it into the system, and off it goes. For those of you who are not familiar with our enrollment packet tool, it deploys a form online, like you see the add a student here. That's just part of the form you're seeing, but it's the essential part to start the form. That information goes into a holding database where the end users, you folks, can then validate the information before it gets transferred into the MMS database. So you have control over what data gets in, what data gets updated prior to accepting it. So we have all of that in place for you. But this thing isn't just as simple as a student data collector. There's a lot of other things that this enrollment packet can do. I think you alluded to surveys a second ago.
Surveys.
The number one survey we hear about, and there's many, but the number one we hear about is the home language survey. Every school has to do the home language survey. We can very easily do it right here in CR enrollment pack. Right. If you're a charter school, a vocational school, a private school, and you want some form of lottery or admissions process, we can build the workflows, we can build the packets, we can build the email communications internally and externally for those folks who are in those processes. If you're into e-commerce, we can add this to our offerings for e-commerce. We have the school payment portal. This is another option where you can link it to your school store directly and collect fees across the wire.
Right. So the great use case there is whenever there's information you need to collect along with fees. For instance, it might be a field trip. It might be sports registration. Right. It might be
lockers, bus fees.
Lockers, buses,
books.
Books is one that's used pretty heavily, and parking is the one that, again, with students of driving age, getting into that parking lottery and paying for that parking spot is a thing.
It is a thing. So fortunately, I just finished my one and have another one to start. Have another one to start in 2 years for parking lottery. Yeah, but the last feature about this that I think is really interesting is that we can have it be multilingual, right? So right here you see the Spanish flag there. We can hit that button and the whole form turns to Spanish, and that's our starting point. As other language needs developed, we can insert them and get those libraries and put them in place.
And that builds on the multilingual functionality we've incorporated into the parent portal as a whole.
Right.
So we can meet the needs of parents where they are, right? So if your home language is Spanish, that's fine. If your home language is Vietnamese, we can take that barrier away from parents so that they can stay engaged and make sure that they understand where their students are, what their students are doing, how their students are behaving, and what have you. So it's something that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, this is going to be helpful. So we've taken a flyover of the entire application, many of the new features that are coming in to make it easier for you to operate. But a couple other things we've done that this is pre-release software, so they're not in this build yet, but they'll be, I think, today, maybe tomorrow. So if you come to Wednesday's webinar as well, we may have these features in. One of the things that we've, again, heard quite a bit about is skills grade entry and assignment grade entry and the stability of that. And it's not pervasive, it's not all over the place, but it happens often enough that it's a concern. And what we've done is we've totally rewritten those pages. We didn't refactor them. We didn't go and try to fix them because we've done that. We've totally refactored or rebuilt them, scraped out all the old code, put the new code in, and have a much faster and a much more stable experience for the teachers coming up in the fall. So be on the lookout for that. The last thing I suspect, or the first thing on your mind at this point is, when can I get my hands on this? When is this going to be available? So our delivery schedule right now is we're planning on the second week of July, the week of July 9th, to have it available. It's almost done, ready to go out the door, probably the end of this month, but we know nobody's going to be around July 4th week. And if you are around, you have other things you want to be worried about than standing up new software. So the week of July 9th, we'll start rolling this out to our customers. So when you come back from your long week, you'll have this right at your desktop.
I'll take this point, though, Patrick, to put this open offer out there, is that if you are the type of person who likes to work over July 4th weekend, drop me a note, because we have something for you to do.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. So that's really our July release, our summer release, and it's pretty exciting. There's a lot of energy around here because this is, again, different than what we've ever seen before, and it's really invigorating. So at this point in time, I'd like to jump to our poll. We have like 4 very, very easy poll questions, and you've used our poll anywhere before. Let me get the poll. Here we go. Let me just go ahead and launch it. And where did it go here? So I was doing before. Bear with me 1 second, folks. Let me launch it again. It's not coming up. Okay, let's do this. And we're going to mouse.
So maybe what we can do, Patrick, and to respect the folks' times, is we can ask the questions.
Sure.
And we can use the chat feature in GoToWebinar, which is, I believe it's functional right now, right? We have it turned on.
Yeah,
so I will head over there and moderate any responses we get there.
Okay. Don't save. Just all right. So in the chat area of your control panel on the right hand side of your screen, I'd like to know, having seen everything we have here, what should we add to the new user interface to make it even easier for you to be successful and to help your students? Go ahead and drop that right in there. And Mike is on the computer taking a look at the responses. Okay, getting responses?
And so there have been a number of questions as we've come along as well, and so we'll go back in just a minute and see if we can't hit some of those as well.
Sure. All right, we getting responses on question 1?
State testing data for parents and students. So some view of the state assessments.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's good.
Importing data from external sources. Philip, I think that you're after my own heart there. I think one of the foundations for vision is the ability to do those data mashups.
Right.
The example that I come across, I use the example I use is the idea of correlating, say, what's on the lunch menu versus what is afternoon behavior. I know that there are a lot of more academic outcome-based concerns, but as an example of taking two separate systems and seeing how they affect what's happening in the school. So there is some provision for that right now, and I think that if that becomes a priority for multiple folks, I would love to see that continue to expand.
Right.
And if you have functional questions about how to do that, we can put you through. We can point you to the resources for the Vision Data Loader or get you in touch with the lane.
Right.
So some other questions about login, good questions. Can we review the teacher analytics on the dashboard? Richard, it's not active on this demo, but you certainly will be able to.
Right.
And that's going to be very similar to what teachers would normally see if you have teacher dashboards enabled in your current MMS portal.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be very similar to that in this. A lot of folks, Patrick, are saying that they'll have more feedback once they start using it.
Yep.
I think that's a fair point.
And so that kind of gives me an idea, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe halfway through July, maybe at the end of July,
Yep.
we send out a survey to the folks who receive the software
Mm-hmm.
to get that feedback.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. Questions about being able to email groups of parents out of Vision, which is, again, something that is not a new topic. It's just a matter of it floating to the top of the priority list. But Holly, I think that's a great point.
Yep.
A lot of folks, Patrick, saying they really appreciate the new look. That's nice.
That's good. That's really good.
Health office component. We can talk more about that at a later date. Underlying tables changing as well. It's a deeper question. Some, not many.
Some, not, that's fair. Some, not many. So if you're familiar with the data structure, because you are a report writer, whether you be using Vision or the legacy PRW, essential tables are the same. We've added data fields and we've added some validation to the data going in, but the data structure is relatively intact.
Okay. Health and fees is another question, showing up right then and there.
Right.
All right. So super. And we have all of these questions. The response is documented.
Yep.
And we'll be able to reach out.
I think we need to ask the one question. I have 3 other questions we could ask, but I think the essential question we need to ask based on our launch of this today is, how does this make you feel?
Yeah.
So if you could take a second, what are your feelings about when you look at Vision?
And so specifically, how do you think your users are going to feel?
Well,
because
it's more refined, right? More refined question. How do you think your users will feel?
Wow, lots of folks. Yeah, so there's some nice positive response coming in there, Patrick. A lot of folks are saying that they're excited. Excited. Refreshing, UX is refreshing. Glad that their suggestions were heard. This is what we were looking for.
Awesome.
There are some questions about more visualizations of data, and I think that we should follow up individually about that. I can talk for a long time about what has been our dashboard and analytics program. I think it is very much a differentiator for us in the market,
right.
Both in terms of how accessible we make it to the users that need it, as well as the flexibility we have in presenting it and automating reports and emailing reports automatically. The navigation is, so this is a good point. The look, the feel is great. Questions about changes in navigation, I think that's a fair question, right? I mean, we have, we're supporting a population of teachers,
right,
that don't want to be technologists,
right.
They want to teach. We have office staff that don't want to be technologists. They want to get their job done.
So the answer to that question, if I'm understanding correctly, is exactly why we did this interface the way we did.
Right.
It's exactly why we have that flyout menu. Exactly why we have that menu search tool, the favorites, the recents, to mitigate all those navigation headaches that we've introduced in the past. So to make it easier for a teacher to get into exactly what they need to do to start creating assignments, to start scoring assessments, to start understanding where their children are in terms of their progression towards competency. Whatever the case may be, we make it easier. Yes, we had to move some things around. We had to realign some of the tools so that they were in a more sensible place. And it will be a bit of a disruption if people drive through those menus that way for the first time. But once they start landing on where they are and understand the associated tools they have with them, the ease of operation will become readily apparent.
Right.
So there is some change, but it's change, I think, for the real good here. If that change becomes too onerous for some, again, we have the favorites. We have the search. It makes it very easy to get where you need to go.
Right. Favorites will be the most useful for us. That's great to hear. Is Vision mobile friendly for our stakeholders? And Richard, I think that's a great question. Some parts of it certainly are.
Right.
Dashboards and reports have been mobile friendly since we introduced them.
Right.
And I think that that's a nice feature. So you can do everything from designing a query to checking in on pre-established dashboards from an iPhone. And it works great.
So in this case where we have this interface, much of that My Dashboards area is reactive. So when you scale or compress your screen up or down, it will grow or shrink and things will realign. Some of the windows that we pull up, the menus, may not, because we haven't finished all that work yet. So you'll be seeing more and more of this fit nicely on a small screen like an iPad.
Right.
Will it all fit onto a phone? That's a tall order.
Well, but at the same time, one of the things that I get to say, and people can ding me for it if they want. I'll actually come in front of the camera for this. Is that there are a lot of things that people will ask for when it comes to mobile functionality, or can I do this on my phone and what have you. And they're good questions to ask. One of the things that we have to do is take a look at the use case of the functionality and see if that is really where that function gets used, right? So for instance, if we see a trend of attendance secretaries taking attendance on a mobile application, we can prioritize that. To date, that example is that attendance clerks don't necessarily do anything outside of their desktop system.
Right.
So, so what my job is to make sure that we promise the things that we can deliver, and that we don't promise stuff that that gets people's hopes up, and we don't have any intent on doing. So, and I think that's a fair statement.
That's a fair statement.
So I'm not going to make promises that we're not intending to complete. So yes, there will be mobile. Where it gets prioritized, and first and foremost, that was through the parent portal, right. And the parent mobile app, which again, if you haven't implemented the parent mobile app, please implement the parent mobile app. Parents love it universally.
Students love it.
Yeah, students love it. It's the thing. And if you're interested in cultivating the relationships with your parent population, getting your students more engaged on a daily basis, it's why it's there.
Right.
All right, I'm going to go back to the.
All right. So let's take a couple more minutes. If you have any other questions you'd like to drop on it, that'd be great. And we'll be able to address them. And we may not hit everyone in this conversation, but believe me, we will pour over these and understand and reach out to you if we need further clarification.
Right. So there's questions about integrated help.
I have an answer to that.
Good.
So one of the things that may not make the July release, but will follow on in a point release, is a direct link to our KBAs, which is our majority of our help system. So in the play in the menu bar across the top, you're going to see a help or KBA window. Type your search criteria in there, scheduling. It'll take you to our KBA library, pre-filter the data, the results set for you to only be scheduling. If you want it to be GPA computations, type GPA computations, and it will come up with the knowledge base articles that are relevant to you there.
So the integrated help.
The integrated help will be right there. And we're not going to get rid of the tech tips that we have in our system. Folks like those, particularly for new users. Again, what am I doing on this page? They click the little icon. They get a short paragraph of what it is they need to do with this feature or function. So the help will still be on board.
Right, good. Browser compatibility and specifically Chromebook. So
browser compatibility, we've tested against IE, Edge, Chrome, and Firefox. And I believe, and I'll verify this, I believe we have tested against Chromebook and it works fine.
Right.
But before I hang my hat on that statement as a fact, I will double check. Safari is the other one we tested against, I believe.
Safari, right. A lot of questions. Scrolling within scrolling. So Sky, you know, the answer to that, and again, this is one of those things that I'll be straight up front with. The new functionality, and as we bring legacy functionality into Vision, we will minimize any scrolling within scrolling. There are some legacy components that will have that. We understand that it's not a usability, you know, it's not necessarily the usability we want to support long term, but there's going to be some of that for the moment.
For the moment, and it's a conversation we have almost on a daily basis, how to minimize that and totally eliminate it. But as Mike said, there'll be some there for a little bit.
I'll tell you, I am loving these questions. Some of them, you know, outside of the scope of this conversation about personalized learning and self-paced learning and scheduling students across multiple years and grade books that span multiple years. And those have been conversations Patrick and I have been having an awful lot of. Some requests for a new interface for the KBAs. That has been heard. It's just a matter of prioritizing the effort. When will the legacy portals no longer be available to use? It's a fine question.
And we don't have a retirement date as of yet, but that date is probably closer than not, that we can retire those legacy portals. But I'm not ready to put a date on it. Obviously, our whole objective here is to retire them, to get rid of them, so that we have this Vision interface that we're working with,
Right.
and that the legacy portals become exactly that legacy.
But again, I mean, along with our ongoing philosophy is we're not here to disrupt anybody's life or make or to create new training events. Right. So like with generations, people can work in generations if they want, and I think everybody on the phone would be surprised how many people say that. Okay.
What else we have?
I think we are up to date on those, at least the ones that I can touch on.
All right. Well, we are at about an hour into our session and coming to the end of this. I would like to thank you all for joining us, and the feedback here has been tremendous. The questions have been equally so, and I really look forward to putting this out in the field here next month so that you have the benefit of vision.
And what we will try to do probably by the end of this week, because we have another session, if you want your superintendents to show up, to take a look at what's coming, if you want to invite anybody from your community to take a look at this. We still have plenty of room on Wednesday
At 2.
At 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
What we will do by the end of the week is we'll consolidate the questions into an FAQ. Edit those for clarity and consolidation, and we'll get some responses out to everybody who's registered.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
That sounds reasonable.
Did I just make a lot of work for you?
You did, but that's okay. So again, thank you very much for your time. Have a great day, and if you have any questions after this, please feel free to email myself or Mike Bronker.
Great.
So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.